All right, good morning. We're here with our Nutshell Pram. Excuse me, we're working on the building up the rudder blade and rudder cheeks today. We're attaching the rudder cheeks to the blade with THIXO flexible epoxy adhesive. Comes out of this cartridge tube. Two parts in there, a resin and a hardener. I don't know which component's thickened. Maybe the hardener, not sure. But it mixes in the little tube and comes out on the end. So all you got to do is squeeze the handle to get it on your work surface. No mixing, no measuring, no checking fillers, etc. We like it. We use it a lot. And like I say, speaking of squeezing the handle, if you use this product or other thickened adhesives, you get a better caulk gun. This one has a 25-to-1 thrust ratio. Bought this from Jamestown distributors. I can never remember the brand. It is a newborn, and it works a lot better than the standard caulk gun that you buy at the Home Depot or Lowe's or wherever you buy your. Those are 7-to-1, so your handle lets you know after a tube or so of this that you might want the better gun. So what we do is we put it on insides, put it on both surfaces. This is raw plywood, so we know it's going to soak in. We maybe put it on a little bit more than what you might if you've already sealed up a surface, but we're kind of doing two things, spreading out the adhesive, letting it soak in, and then also it's going to do its adhesive thing and fasten the two pieces together. So we went to our clamp collection and started pulling out clamps, and we're grabbing them for people that we know have built boats or have done a lot of repairs on boats all around the country and all around the world, and using their clamps, which we name. One of them's for Captain Jack over here. That's Skipper's dad. They built boats and did a lot of sailing, a lot of repairing. And then Skipper's mom, Adrian, this is her clamp. And it turns out she's got like the coolest clamp. It's got this little handle where you can do one-handed. So in case you need to film for YouTube, you just pull the little handle and get that to work its way down. Because boat building seems like to be a 2.5, 3-handed evolution. Then you can go over and tighten that a little bit, and let's see if we can get down here. What we're looking for with epoxy is to get enough pressure to where we see adhesive start to squeeze out. Of course, you have to do this clamping early enough to get it to start coming out of those joints there. And let's see if it's doing it. What you may find is, there it is. It's hard to see on the camera. See these little wet areas where it's starting to, epoxy starting to come out of the joint. And that's when you want to stop clamping. And in this case, which I thought might happen, you squeeze and it's like, oh, there's a little bit. Stop there, because when you walk back by a minute or two later, you'll see even more has migrated over, looking for the spot to escape from, and there's what we want to see. It's a nice little bit of epoxy squeezing out. That means we've filled that seam right there, and we can move on to the next one. It's not like wood glue that you got to have a lot of pressure on. This epoxy, the thickened epoxy, I should keep saying, a little different from just straight epoxy. Fills gaps and makes this clamping a lot easier. At least this is the way we like it. So every adhesive has a boat builder, and every boat builder has an adhesive. So if you've got your favorites, feel free to post them in the comments. Let us know how you do it, how you like it. Another thing about this epoxy is it's structural. can be used underwater. You can drill into it, so you can fasten into it. So a lot of applications, kind of a, which is like one of the things we like in a product. You know, there's a company sell similar products. If you're a West System fan, I think they've got G-Flex. If you're a Pettit fan, they've got Flex Epoxy. We're TotalBoat, sold by James Distributors. And in this case, give it to us by TotalBoat, because they like the pictures that we take. So there it is. This piece is clamping up, and I'll see if I can back up a little bit and get you a better picture of what we're actually working on and talking about for the pram. It's a just a little rudder. It's cut out in 3 pieces. There's a blade, which is cut out of 3/8 inch plywood, inch thick, not 3/6 or not 1/4. So we had our little moaning chair moment yesterday when we grabbed the wrong piece of plywood, cut it out of 1/4, and then started shaping it and wondering, why is this so thin? Well, it's so thin because we grabbed the wrong plywood. So moaning chair for a few seconds and go, well, you know, I was going to make a pattern anyway, or hoping to. So there's the pattern. So you cut out the 3/8 inch piece, and then we cut out the 1/4 inch cheeks. And the cheeks are this little piece here is what we're talking about. Goes towards the top of the rudder, the head of the rudder. Probably 500 other boat names for that. And the one on each side, glued them together. So let's do math in public. 1/4 inch plus 3/8 comes out to be 7/8 inches, and that's how wide our tiller is going to be, is 7/8. And then we'll make some I'll call them tiller straps. I'm not sure what the builder called them on his boat, that are going to take tiller straps. So connect up here so the tiller can go up and down, and tiller that way. Oh, I'm sorry, look down. The tiller that way. They should not let me build boats unsupervised. So that's what's going on right here. And back to clamping. Let's see who helped out today. Webb. Webb's been around the world in boats multiple times, a serial circumnavigator, and he's done some repairs to boats under conditions that you, I, and most people watching this could never imagine. So he gets a clamp. Richard up in Massachusetts, he gets one. He's given us a lot of tips, been very helpful. He's a serial boat builder and has built several of these prams and had some great tips for us along the way. Let's see who's next to him. There's Richard. Next to him is Captain Jack, and then the Commodore Adrian. And then who's next to that? Hazelwood. Hazelwood built boats with Captain Jack, and Skipper watched them when she's a little tyke, standing quietly off in the corner is what she tells me. I can't believe that Skipper ever stood quietly anywhere. But she got pressed into service, putting putty in all the screw holes of a little sailboat that her dad built. And of course, I'm sure it was the environmentally safe putty that the little child was given to smash into screw holes, but she did it and stripped off all her fingerprints. And so if you ever need someone to rob a bank, Skipper's the person to ask for that. Alan, up in New York, been racing and sailing and racing for many years, and has brought us all kinds of parts for our sunfish. And there was a champion in the Bantam class. Helped restore a Bantam number 2, I believe it was, recently. And he knows his way around a sander and a jigsaw, that's for sure. See, Mr. Murray over there is, I think, has more boats than we have, which he won't admit to, so that also means he's a pirate. keeping things close to the chest there, but our English friend has a lot of great stories, and he likes sharing them with us. And then over there, let's see, is it coming into focus? Mr. Doug, another English buddy that we've chatted with through the interweb, or the Webernet, whichever term you like to use, has given us all kinds of tips. He's our Drascum and pretty much any other kind of boat source of knowledge. Built wooden Drascums for many years and put out some beautiful boats, and we get tips from him which we promptly ignore, on how to get a beautiful paint and varnish job, and then I get in a hurry, impatient, and just want to mop varnish on. But I'm gonna change that. I'm gonna start going the route that Doug and other folks go, and actually use a brush more than once in a can of paint or a can of varnish, and get to have some of those heirloom brushes that you hang in your shop and tell the kids don't touch them, don't look at them, and then you find that they're out using it to sweep up some dirt or something, and you're happy about that too. Got a few other little clamps, and really there's a lot of ways to hold this together. On one of our boats we put some little screws in, so we had mechanical fastening and we had chemical fastening, and just left the screws in as decoration, a little bit of bronze bling on there, and it's been holding up just fine. Now mind you, our boats don't get, some of them are over here watching, so I don't want to talk too much about them. Some of them, they don't get extensive use. They're not left out in the weather, the yard, or on the beach with the sun beating on them year round. They're not being towed behind a big yacht behind the around the world. So some of these methods we use are more for a lightly sailed, lightly rowed, paddled, U-load, sculled, whatever method of propulsion you want, or for boats that are for light use and then have the opportunity to store them in a space to where they're not getting pine needles and tree leaves and squirrel bits and bird stuff and everything else dropped on them. Primarily our concerns are water, to keep the water out of the boats and off the components, so it doesn't find the little spaces you may have missed with as you're sealing up a piece of wood. And so there's some things we do that other folks are like, well, that thing, it's going to get water and it's going to rot in 2 minutes. It's like, well, it might, depending on the climate you're in. If you're down in the tropics or somewhere, or you're up in a shady, moist area where the water can get in. So our boat carpenter friend Keith told us that you can't keep water out, but you can keep it in. So always have a plan to try to keep your boat mostly dry, or when you get back, keep a way to dry it out, so that your pram that you just spent hard-earned money on, you don't just sit it out in the yard under a tree and come back the next season and go, why is there a big hole in the bottom of it? I thought this was marine grade plywood and marine paint. Well, it is, but water doesn't care. It'll just rot slower. And some people do take that approach, spin back around. You know, the approach we use, if stored properly, you know, and maintained and cared for, you know, that's we're hoping that's a 100-year boat, with the materials and the methods and the care and maintenance. Now, someone can certainly go to the big box lumber store and buy some lumber, some plywood that's not marine grade, and some glue, some type of glue and some type of house paint, and build a boat that they can enjoy just as much as this one. Yeah, but if it's not taken care of and kept clear of the elements when not in use, then you've maybe got a 5 or 7 year boat. And that's some things we're finding on some of these little runabouts, wooden runabouts from the 1940s and 50s, that you'll see them, they look classic. and someone's taking care of it. They put it in the barn. May have sat there for 40 years. And then someone pulls it out and it's not full of hantavirus, and maybe it is, but they can clean it out and use it. Whereas the boat that sits under the tree with no cover is probably not going to be in great shape, even if it's fiberglass. We have stories about that. We'll save those for later. So what's my point? There is no point. It's just some tips, random musings about clamping up pieces of plywood. In this case, this material does clamp well. It in some applications, if you need a lot of adhesion, you need a lot of structural integrity, then you may want to come in with some neat epoxy, just straight epoxy, and put several coats of epoxy on that raw wood before you clamp it up. And it might even take you several hours or maybe a day to get a coat on, let it soak in, come back later and go, where'd all the epoxy go? Well, it got sucked down into that grain, that raw grain of that wood. Roll another coat on. And these are some tips that we're sharing. Andy Miller, I believe his name, from Boatworks Today, does a great video. This came out just within the last month or so. If you're going to put fiberglass over the top of this, you might roll on some epoxy, straight epoxy, put that fiberglass on there and put some epoxy into the fiberglass cloth and think, man, that looks great. You go off and then messing about in your boat a few months later, and that fiberglass cloth can come peeling right off in one big sheet, because what's happened is the wood here is soaked in the epoxy and the cloth has held onto its epoxy, so there's nothing really bonding the two together. So go look up Andy Boatworks Today and watch his video. I think it's probably something like fiberglass common mistakes made, and it's real good because you get an idea how many times you can either put on not enough epoxy or maybe put on too much and work it too hard, and cause you moaning chair moments down the road. So back to clamping. This little small clamp here is plenty. You don't have to have these bigger, I think they're Jorgensen brand or whatever clamps you like. You can have just some of these. You might go even into a little discount hardware store and find some that are $1 each or something, and you can grab those. You do need to be able to control the clamping pressure, so a spring clamp, a hand clamp, if we were to put one of those on there like we use on sunfish restorations, it could put too much pressure on. And Jeff from $2 Boatworks has some great videos on building a Caledonia yawl. He talks about epoxy a lot throughout, and you can actually squeeze too much out of the joint. Now you have an epoxy starved joint, and it will fail over time, or worse yet, let water in and this component start to rot from the inside out. And by the time you see the rot come up on the surface, it's going to be time to build a new rudder. So those are some of our tips, and this is also the component we're working on with the Pram rudder. Got the tiller kind of roughed out over here on a piece of teak. You have to use teak? No. Do we have a piece of teak that was scrap from something else that looked like it was going to be close to tiller size? Yes. And do we have teak in the boat? Yeah. So we're going to try to match the tiller to the thwarts. Material wise, we could use maybe mahogany also. And why did we use those? Well, that's what the mahogany was recommended by the designers. Joel White drew it up. He's the naval architect. Maynard Bray and John Wilson said mahogany for several components. Marine grade plywood, and whatever you can find for the spars, which are kind of sitting in the back there. Spruce, we like spruce, we like cypress, we like, since we can't find either one of those up here, We like, this is the SPF lumber, spruce. It's either spruce, pine, or fir, or it's, I don't know how they do that, how it can be all three. But this is a 2x4 that we bought at the local store. We looked for the cleanest one we could without knots that were going to be significant in the construction. So that you zoom in, you probably can see that there are some knots on this. But we worked around those, worked with those, and put that in. So does this knee have to be mahogany? No. It could probably be a hunk of pine if you want. But think back to what we mentioned earlier. Then you want to, you know, might have to take a little bit of extra maintenance care with that to keep pine as a softwood, so it can take on moisture easier. It could rot faster if you lay this piece of mahogany, talking about this little quarter knee, this little piece right here, out in the yard with a piece of pine, the pine would rot faster. You have to use teak on the seats? No. Plans call for just a good old pine board from the local store, 3/4 inches thick, and you can use that. Just need to get a good coat of paint or a good coat of varnish on it. And I say marine grade, I'm just talking about the quality. You know, you might look at Rust-Oleum. You can get it locally and go, well, it doesn't say marine on here. Actually, some of it does. They sell a topside paint. And that's where Rust-Oleum got its start, was making coatings for marine type equipment, for steel primarily. But it does have some oil type qualities to it. I think so it's good. We've used it on several boats too. It doesn't last as long as some of the higher grade, more expensive marine paints do that we've used. Say, for instance, Airlux Brightside or Pettit Easy Epoxy. All grips always had a good reputation, and we've been using TotalBoat recently. They're wet edge, but I don't have a baseline on longevity for that yet because I've only been using it for a few years. And then Kirby up in Massachusetts can tell you all about paint, so take a look at some of their stuff. So this you can save a little money on materials if you don't use teak or mahogany, but realizing that you may spend more money on materials as far as coatings go to protect the softer wood that you put in there. And it could be a weight thing, might be a difference of a few pounds here or there. We're not sure what this boat would weigh built with pine thwarts versus teak, but maybe someone out there has done both and can tell us. But we'll weigh it when it's done. It's supposed to come in around 90 pounds. See where she's at. It's not nice to talk about a lady's weight, but as far as the boat design and specifications go, that's where it's at. So I hope y'all have some good tips. We hope y'all can share what you know and what you've learned and down in the comments. We'd appreciate it. And we'll get back with you on the next little pieces of whatever that goes on to our Nutshell Pram. Excuse me. That'll do it.